Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a new channel of the Cinema Color Podcast. I am your host, Patrick, a.k.a. Butch, and I'm joined by my co-host, Robert. Say hello, Robert.
Wow, we're getting pretty formal as we launch this new 5-year mission of this channel. Hello, everybody.
Well, this is Butch again. We are doing a series on one of our favorite things. Rob and I are one of the first things that we bonded over, aside from tennis and the original series Star Trek, and a few other things, pinball maybe. One of the first things we bonded over was Star Trek novels, ladies and gentlemen. It was back in the mid-'80s. If you were interested in new Star Trek, there was no such thing, except every couple of years they released a new movie. You got to watch the reruns of the original series. I guess if you were a real nerd, I wasn't, and I didn't have access to them. You're watching the animated series, maybe, but it was 79 episodes of the TV series at 4:00 on weekdays, or you could read the new Star Trek novel that came out every 2 months from Pocket Books. So you'd pedal your bicycle down to the mall and go to the Walden Books and pick up the new Star Trek novel. It was usually about 220 pages or something like that, and that'd give you about a few days' entertainment and a new Star Trek story to think about. So what we thought we'd do, since it was something that we were very into when we were younger men, or when we were older boys, I guess what it was, is we thought we would go back to the very beginning, to the very first Star Trek novel ever published, original story Star Trek novel ever published, and that was 1970. And that novel was Spock Must Die by James Blish.
That is actually not correct.
Oh, here we go. Rob, set us straight then, buddy.
So, I don't know. Did I send you a copy of this book? Not the one we're going to cover tonight, but did I ever send you Mission to Horatius?
You did not. I would remember that one.
It was because I had 2 copies of it now. I mislaid one, so now I just have one. But it is a one-off that they did in like 1968. And it's really? A hardback.
Mission to Horatius.
Yeah, and it's for young adults, so it's not...
Maybe that's what it was.
So, see that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And that is... Let me get the year here.
I'm going to laugh if you're going to say 1973.
1968.
Damn.
So that actually would be the first original Star Trek novel as far as I'm aware.
So we will say that James Blish's Spock Must Die was the first original Star Trek story published for an adult audience. We'll just say it that way.
The other one's not a kid's book, but it's for the age group we were in when we started reading Star Trek novels, teenagers. But the first Star Trek novel I ever read was a Bantam book, like this one we're going to cover today, or these ones we are covering.
Yes.
It was. Now I'm drawing a blank. Trek to Mad World was the first one I ever read. And I remember thinking, this is awesome. It's like a really great, I don't know if it's still awesome. I haven't read it in 30 years, but it was like a really good Star Trek episode. And what I liked was you can picture all the characters as voices in your head.
Yes.
Right.
You're seeing them when you're reading about them. You're seeing them in your mind's eye. Absolutely. My first one, of course, was the Klingon Gambit, which I think is the third pocket books Star Trek novel published somewhere in the early 80s or maybe late 70s. So the gist of it is that at some point, Bantam Books, that is why we were calling this Trek channel Journey to Bantam. This is Journey to Bantam #1 tonight, Spock Must Die.
Nice.
We're calling it that because Bantam Books bought the rights to publish Star Trek stories. They did 2 things. The first, the most important thing that they did is they made, essentially, James Blish wrote novelizations in 12 volumes of every Star Trek episode from the original series in 12 volumes. It was Star Trek...
From the scripts.
Yeah, from the scripts, exactly. So there were differences. So if you're watching, say, Operation Annihilate, they blow the planet up in Operation Annihilate. Because that's what the script had to do. And they're like, we can't blow the script. But they decided that after the script. And so even though, and the thing is, the first couple of these were published while the series was still going. So I think the first one was published in 67 or 68. And so he had written three of these. Blish had three of these. They're called Star Trek 1, Star Trek 2, Star Trek 3 through Star Trek 12. Yeah. And then this
one
was
would have like what, 6 episodes?
Four to six, depending. Right, exactly. And so he would so he published all 12 of those, and then he wrote this one, and then he passed away, alas. And so that was the last Star Trek we get from James Blish.
And wasn't he English, if I remember?
Yeah, he's a Brit. Absolutely. That's right. And then the other ones that I remember, and of course, this is a time in my life when I was not really clear on, I had not watched a lot of Star Trek because my parents didn't spring for cable. We had the biggest house in the neighborhood, and we didn't spring for cable. So if I got to watch Star Trek, it was at a friend's house, and I had to muscle them into it until basically we moved to Idaho Falls in 1984, and I met you, and that's when we started watching them. But I'd read most of the stories in junior high, living in Traverse City, Michigan, from these Star Trek 1 through 12. But the other thing that I'd read is Alan Dean Foster's Star Trek Log 1 through 6, which were novelizations of the animated series, and so I really didn't know which ones were which, right? I mean, because I wasn't sophisticated enough to pay attention. Oh, this one's by Ballantine Books, and it's written by Alan Dean Foster, and that one's written by James Blish, and it's Bantam Books, and so I didn't really draw the line between them. I just thought it was all Star Trek stories based on aired episodes, which they were. So some of them were half an hour animated episodes, and some were hour-long original series episodes.
I'm looking at my list right now. So of the James Blish ones, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and there's 12, right?
I believe so, yeah.
And then the Alan Dean Foster ones, I've got 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 10. So I'm missing a couple.
Oh, that's
but I've got most of those, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So in some of those, it's really interesting to go back and think that that was, when I really come down to it, my first Star Trek experiences were largely sitting in that fourth period reading class in junior high in 8th grade, where I'm plowing through these Star Trek stories, you know, having only seen the show maybe 5 or 6 times in my life at that point.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I just assumed you had watched it every day. Now,
and of course, the other really important Star Trek book in my life, of course, was the book that was written to describe the series, and it was written after season 2 was created. What do they call that book? It was
Compendium?
The Star Trek Compendium or something like that. And it was written after season 2, and so I had that list, and that was my checklist of which episodes have I seen and which episodes have I not seen. I would get that out, and every time I saw one, I would check it off there. Of course, like I said, it was only after season 2, so none of the season 3 episodes were on there. And I remember seeing a season 3 episode, I think it was Spectre of the Gun, and I was like, what the hell is this? It's not in the book, because I didn't know the book was published when the series was still going. I never occurred to me.
Stop making jokes about the book.
You couldn't just look up, you know, on Wikipedia how many series of Star Trek there were, what the episodes were called, stuff like that. If you didn't have a book, you didn't know, right? There was just no way to know. So a lot of how I first interacted with Star Trek was through the novelizations of animated and original series episodes. But then the series ends, and eventually Blish runs out of all those things to write, and next thing you know, we have to go with novels, and that's what we're into, right? It's like authors. Some of them are well known science fiction writers, and some of them are up and coming science fiction writers. They write a novel, it gets published, and they make a story. So these Bantam novels, there are about 12 of them that were written. Largely, this one was published in 1970. I think the last one was 1981 or 82. And then at some point, Pocket Books buys the rights to Star Trek novels away from Bantam Books, and then we start getting the Pocket Book series. And so at some day, we'll plow through the Pocket Book series as well.
That'll probably be when we're retired and don't have jobs.
I was going to say, because, I have a lot of stuff to read for a lot of reasons, and it's like, even though this book was a brisk 119 pages, it still took me a few days to read it. So, because Patrick used to do a lot of his reading late at night, and now Patrick doesn't do anything late at night anymore. If I try to read a book after 11 o'clock, I'm sawing logs pretty quickly, because it's just like, the eyes don't focus no more.
Yeah. You know what I remember about the Bantam Books also is the great covers they had, Butch.
Yeah, I mean, that was always my favorite thing about Star Trek novels, is the covers. So what's the cover of this one look like?
Oh shit, I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you. So it's
Spock Must Die. Is this the one we're doing?
Yeah, Spock Must Die.
It's like, what are we doing today?
It's literally like a monotone cover, right? It's red and black, and it's got basically kind of a mirror image of Spock, like noggin and noggin and stuff like that. And some weird kind of, I'm assuming there's supposed to be neutrinos or something swirling around their heads or something like that. But we can get into it. So I thought when we do this, we should probably cut on some certain themes. So, are there new and interesting characters in this book? Are there, are there new and interesting villains in the book? Are there new and interesting races or species that we get to meet? Are there some callbacks to previous to the television series? Do we get more background on our favorite characters? And who's acting out of character for what you're used to them acting? So let's start with that one on this, because I think the biggest thing that you see in this book, and Blish admits later that it was his editor's fault there, maybe he threw his editor under the bus. Everybody's calling McCoy Doc in this book. They all call him Doc, and it's like,
If I remember reading this somewhere, it might have even been in the forward for this book. I don't know. I read this book like a month ago, so. But if I remember right, Blish said he didn't actually ever watch the show. He just was reading the scripts.
Yes. Well, surely he knew that the script called them Bones a lot. I would have thought that was clear. But again, he's only made it three books into it by the time he writes this one. So he's probably only read the scripts for like 15 Star Trek episodes at this point. Never seen one. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's calling Bones Doc. He's doing something that I hate in almost every Star Trek novel I've ever read, which is going way overboard on Scotty's brogue.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I still am not sure what Kenna means. But, yeah, there... I've forgotten your original question, but I think it was people out of character.
Yeah.
Yeah, there will be someone out of character in this book, which is the main plot point.
Yes, exactly.
But I didn't notice anything that was glaring.
Yeah, not really either. It's just that terminology. I guess the other thing is that there's a whole lot of people. What I remember about the original series and what I've read about it is a lot of times the network would be like, hey, could you dumb this episode down a little bit? This is too much egghead stuff. We don't want the egghead stuff. You're not going to get. That's because a TV audience is not a novel reading audience, right? So when I remember a lot of the nerd stuff, and I like the nerd stuff because I was reading the nerd stuff in the books, right? But they dumbed it down for the TV, so you're getting references to like Finnegan's Wake and stuff like that. Yeah, we're going to make some James Joyce literary references. They'll get it. It's no problem. Really? Okay, that's cool.
I have an English degree, and I don't even understand that reference.
There was one point where Kirk throws out a reference to Battle of Manila Bay. He tells Scotty to fire away, Grizzly. I had to look that up. I had to look who's Grizzly. It's from some American captain at the Battle of Manila Bay in the Spanish-American War, 1898 or whatever. So
well, here's the thing. So as I said, one of the nice things about the novels is, and I was super familiar with the show because, as I probably mentioned on Waxed Philosophic on past podcasts that no one's listened to, from the time I was 10, Star Trek was like my friend. We used to move all the time, every year or two. And it didn't matter, and we never had cable, and it didn't matter where I lived, Star Trek was on at 4 o'clock right after school. And so I had seen them all.
Oh, yeah.
Or pretty close. And so and television and literature are different mediums, right?
Oh, yes.
And you can do things in a book that you just can't do on TV. But because I was so familiar with the TV show, it was like the best of both worlds because I get to picture everybody and hear their voice in my head and see them in my mind's eye.
Yep.
And also get the elaboration and doing stuff that just because of special effects and costs and stuff you wouldn't be able to do on a TV show. So the novels are really fun for me because you get stories that are more than just landing on a planet, solving a puzzle, and leaving a burning
the black freighter of doom sails away, as we've been saying on our treks through TOS. Exactly.
Yeah, and so it was really, I think if you're a Star Trek fan, novels are definitely a worthwhile endeavor. I get that they're not everybody's cup of tea, and I get why the networks would say, dumb it down. But there's obviously a lot of I think Star Trek fans, as a rule, are smarter than a lot of TV shows, fan bases.
Absolutely.
There's a reason there's 900 Star Trek novels, according to Wikipedia, that have been written over the years. There's a market, right? And like Absolutely. You said, in the glory days of the 80s, those pocketbooks would come out every 2 months and they'd be on the bestseller list.
And that's your Star Trek. That's your entire canon at that point, is the TV show and those novels. And of course, the novels are they're not part of the official Star Trek because let's be honest, I mean, this novel is going to be a good example. All these novels can't coexist with each other. I think at some point they created a rule. Look, you can't kill off major characters in your Star Trek novel and stuff like this. But
you don't know what author A over here is doing if you're author B writing your own book. But they did get to explore. I was talking about this with someone the other day. But you'd have a character that was maybe in one episode of the show, one or two, but you could explore their whole backstory in novels. Hey, what's M'Benga up to?
Yeah, yes,
or
absolutely.
Or like, remember we talked about the episode where in the script they were going to have McCoy's daughter come aboard, and
Joanna,
Kirk was going to flirt with her and stuff. Well, Joanna is never even mentioned on the series, yet there's books about her.
I think the first one I remember is Crisis on Centaurus. Which is one of the pocket books, has her as a main guest character. That's right, exactly. Well, that's a nice thing. So this being the first novel, we aren't going to spend any time with any of those people, really. Blish is going to write pretty much about just the main characters, plus, Nurse Chapel and an occasional reference to Yeoman Rand. And a really, 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 at first I wrote down a note. Is he like Chekhov doesn't exist? But at some point he mentions, oh, by the way, Chekhov, you're the duty officer, and that's all we get to see of Chekhov in this story, really. I mean, Chekhov's like a non-character in the story, but he's there. But
What's
for the most, so Captain Jerk here. So listen, so we get basically all the characters in this are the main characters that you would see.
Bridge crew.
Yeah, the bridge crew, plus Nurse Chapel and Scotty and McCoy and Rand. And stuff like that, but so that's fine, and they don't, and we don't really meet any new species. We get to meet some old species. The Klingons are in this, the Organians are in this, and that's pretty much it. It's a stripped down story. And if you're going to do one first Star Trek story, you may as well do. This is a sequel, I think, to Errand of Mercy. That's pretty obvious, right? So
it is, and I would say, who probably, I don't have anything to back this up, but who probably is not a fan of this book? J.J. Abrams. Because this story probably takes place over most of a year.
Absolutely,
right?
It's like at least several months long, right? Because so it's pretty crazy. So it's not all wrapped up in a 4-hour period. Who else is not a fan of this? Season 3 of the original Star Trek, where every episode's like 4 hours long, except for that one that was like 3 months long. So, but we'll get there. We're
Miramani, where are you? I've got my sock ready.
So there are some callbacks. Like I said, there's callbacks to Errand of Mercy because we get the Organians, and we also get, at the very, very, very end of this novel, we get Admiral Kor at the very end of this novel. They mention mirror characters from the Mirror Universe. That's a reference to Mirror Mirror.
Hey, Butch, like I said, it's been about a month since I read this. Yeah. Was this where they're doing they would have like little footnotes?
Yeah. Some of them they did. Some of them they did, but the next one I wrote down at some point, Kirk tells Scotty to get off the blower. And I was like, well, that doesn't say what that's a reference to, but that's a piece of the action, right? Where they make a big deal about a blower as a telephone or whatever. So then so at some point somebody's eating, they get somebody a bowl of chicken and quattro triticale soup.
Yep, that's Troubles.
And so we see Koloth for about 15 for about a page and a half in this one too. And by the way, that doesn't end well for Koloth. Bones is reluctant to issue happy pills. Apparently he forgot about Wolf in the Fold when he gave some stuff that could tranquilize a live volcano.
There'd be dead hookers here.
They mentioned that Klingon women are not on Klingon crews, and I was like, did you not remember Day of the Dove, where there's at least 2 of them, including the captain's wife? But that's fine. And then Kirk mentions telekinetic species like the Melkotians, which is Spectre of the Gun. So we got some callbacks. That's kind of nice.
And it is nice.
Yeah, so do we want to do a really quick recap of this episode, I guess we could do?
Yeah, well, I think with this book, it's pretty easy because it was a breezy short novel. And I also liked how, and, this won't be a thing going forward, but I liked how Blish titled every chapter.
Yes. Not just a number, but just kind of a thing happening. So go ahead. I'll let you do it.
Okay. And we can stop and discuss points, but,
Yep.
It starts off, McCoy and Scotty are having a philosophical discussion about if one's soul is lost during transport, which I thought was interesting.
Absolutely. I did too. That's something else that's a little interesting. There's a lot more spirituality and religion in this book than in almost any of the original Star Trek series episodes.
Yeah.
So.
And then Spock announces we're at war with the Klingons!
Yep.
Exclamation point. And the Organians are nowhere to be found. Of course, that was the reason for the uneasy peace, was the Organians just said, you guys aren't fighting today.
Yep.
We're not going to fight today. Or whatever.
Yeah, no, the Day of the Doving again, but yeah, it's fine.
No, it's, I think it was, what's the one where Spock says there's a multi-legged creature on your shoulder?
Taste of Armageddon. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Armageddon.
That's right.
Anyway.
You don't Armageddon it. Are you getting it? Don't Armageddon it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Fuck you, Def Leppard. Anyway, Chapter 2, Behind the Lines, we find out the Enterprise is on the far side of the Klingon Empire. So this is kind of interesting. I'm picturing, I don't remember, did they have a map in the book?
No. This is, I think, before anybody developed such maps. There are pretty detailed maps of our galaxy now in a Star Trek universe now that we're 7 TV series in. I'm sorry, but at the time, I don't think anybody really had a good grasp of what's where. But yeah, basically all we know is they're on the far side of the Empire, and if we're at war with the Empire, with the Federation, that means we got to either go around it or through it. It's way too far to go around.
And Spock says we should go to Organia, but it's 6 months away. I'm talking to you, J.J. Abrams. 6 months away at Warp 6.
Yep. Yeah, that's right.
Now we're talking, because we have established, I'm talking to you, J.J. Abrams, that the universe and the galaxy those are big places. These are vast distances. Yep. And the Klingon Empire is not 10 minutes away, the first exit out of town. You can't be... And Scotty notes that the transporter range, I'm talking to you, Jay, the transporter range, and I know this isn't canon, but it's 16,000 miles. So Saturn is too far.
Oh, yeah. Well, the moon's too far.
Yeah.
Moon's 240,000 miles away, so yeah.
Yeah. So I like that. I like that he put that shit in the book.
Yep.
All right. This is what we're dealing with. And so Scotty suggests, hey, maybe we could use tachyon beaming to beam copies of ourselves. We could beam a copy of Spock to Organia.
Because tachyons, and they have to explain what tachyons are, because A, they were actually fairly new discovery in science in 1970, and B, they have to assume most people don't understand them. And so tachyons are particles that could move faster than the speed of light, they theorized at that time. And so theoretically you could beam him, and almost instantaneously he'd come back and would have knowledge. The fake version, the tachyon version of him having coming back, he'd be able to explain what's going on Organia once he got back. So that'd be the answer.
You can kind of have two people. You could be in two places at once, basically.
And that would also solve the soul problem that McCoy and Scotty were talking about earlier, because he'd never be destroyed. He would stay in the chamber the whole time that Tachyon Spock was gone, or whatever. Right. I guess Doctor Strange would say it's your astral self that's beaming, or whatever. But whatever.
Of course, they both beam down to so many places. The original them is long gone, probably.
Yes. Right. Hence.
Yeah, that's why we're getting this philosophical discussion, right? Because every time you beam, you're getting disassembled and reassembled.
Yep.
And is something getting lost?
Yep.
And
how would you know if it did
idea.
get lost? It's an interesting discussion that lots of people have had lots of times, and I'm not just talking when you're a freshman in college and living in the dorms and smoking pot and thinking about such things. Yeah, so
I'm sure we probably had that very discussion in high school.
Oh yeah.
If not junior high. But anyway, they try the Tachyon beaming with Spock. Spock's a logical choice. However, it doesn't work right, and now we have two Spocks. Yeah. And it's going to be tricky to figure out which is the real deal.
Yeah, and they're two Spocks, and they're different, distinct, and not identical versions. It's like So Kirk immediately calls one Spock 2 and one Spock 1. We have Spock 1 and Spock 2, and he's got to get down to figure out which one of them is responsible for the pink ring in the bathtub.
Right.
I'm sorry. That is the cat in the hat comes back.
You're sousing. So Spock 1 says, well, kill one of us, and Spock 2 says, don't. So we have a conundrum, I believe is the technical term.
Yeah, and I will, if I can diverge for a minute, they kind of jump quickly to an assumption that I don't know you can jump to, which is, well, one of these guys might be a bad Spock, right? So he might either be a Klingon agent or might have been tampered with by the Klingons, or maybe something went wrong, or maybe he's mirror Spock or something like that. There's a lot of talk about left-handedness and right-handedness and mirrors.
Well, I think you're blishing a little. Yes. I think that's coming up here.
Yeah, you're right. I am blishing a bit.
All right. So in chapter 4, A Problem in Detection, Kirk ponders why chicks dig Spock. I don't know why that was in there really, other than it's probably been one of the main questions that everybody's had since Star Trek went on the air.
Yeah, let's just real quick talk about that. In 1970, the series has been over for a year. I think you could. So this is when Star Trek fandom is really like, the only thing keeping Star Trek alive at this point is fandom, and there was a lot of, everybody assumed that Shatner was going to be like the heartthrob of this TV series, and it turned out that most women thought Leonard Nimoy was the heartthrob of the series and stuff like that, and so it's only natural for them to kind of write that into the novel. It's interesting because when we do the next novel, they're going to write into that too. Because you can. It's hard for us to really be able to tell if we were in our 20s. Or teens in 1970, that would have been all that Star Trek was about, is like, that and fan fiction and stuff like that. So even fan fiction even had Kirk couldn't keep his hands off of Spock, but I digress. So it's only natural that they talk about that, because that's giving the fans what they want, right? Which is talking about how sexy Spock is.
And I thought they had some interesting psychology discussions in this one, talking about inadequate emotional discharge and the link between stress and cancer, which is interesting because that didn't really come up again until the 90s with like the ACEs study that you probably heard of and stuff. And so that idea now is a big idea in psychology. Yep. But this is 1970, the year I was born. This is 50 years ago. So I thought that was real interesting.
Well, and of course, it's only natural that they're talking about a psychological discussion, because McCoy says several times in this book that he is the Enterprise's chief psychologist. So it only makes sense.
but I mean, their psychology was pretty current, even by 2020 standards.
Yeah.
But
Bush done his homework.
It ends up that one of the Spocks had tried to get the Enterprise spotted. Remember, they're at war with the Klingons. And so both Spocks get relieved of duty.
Yep. They dropped the ship out of warp, and so they become detectable, right? Yeah.
So this is an interesting, you're on a months-long episode, basically, and you're at war. You're cut off from communicate. You're too far from the Federation. You're too far to get any kind of communication with Starfleet Command. And you've got two Spocks running around. They're both, I think all that's a real interesting idea of how the day-to-day operation of the ship was probably going during this. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, we've seen a couple times in the original series, we've seen duplicates, usually duplicate Kirks or whatever, and they're like, no, I'm the real one, and stuff like that. And it all gets resolved quickly because it's an hour-long TV show, so it has to be resolved basically in the scene that they're in or whatever. But this gives us a few chapters to chew on, though. Well, which one is our Spock, and which one is whatever the fuck's wrong with Spock? Yeah. Right? And so it turns out that by chapter 5, they're trying to figure out ways to tell, and McCoy makes the startling suggestion that Kirk order Rand to kiss both of them to see which one of them reacts un-Spock-like.
Yeah, I don't even remember that.
Oh, yeah, he's like, maybe you should order Rand to kiss them both, and we'll see what their reaction is. I was like,
yeah, that's good
stuff. By the way, I can get on board with that, but yeah, that's definitely showing its age of being written in 1970. That would violate all sorts of. You get sent to HR in a hurry if you did that.
Yeah, but also that would probably get Rand killed by Chapel.
Yes, exactly. So they clearly could have just had Chapel. Like Chapel would have been wouldn't have had to volunteer wouldn't have had to order to do that. She'd have volunteered. So.
Well, it turns out one of the Spocks, because now the Klingons are monitors, have the Enterprise under surveillance.
Yep.
But one of the Spocks barricades himself in sickbay.
Spock 1, yes, exactly.
And 3 months later, now 3 months have passed. The Klingons are winning the war, and they're searching for the Enterprise. And the Enterprise arrives at Organia.
Yeah.
And there's Klingons everywhere, and I don't know about you. I had a lot of fun picturing all these ships.
Yes.
You know,
Corvettes and destroyers and a cruiser.
Yeah, it was great. All the stuff that you couldn't show on the television show.
Yes, right. For the first 2 seasons, it was just a point of light the Klingon ship was. And we don't get to actually see any Klingon ship until season 3 when they debut it in the Enterprise incident as a Romulan ship, of course. So that's great.
Yeah. You're probably not going to see anything like this until Best of Both Worlds in the next generation.
Yep, exactly. Right? Yep.
So it's kind of crazy. Klingons everywhere. We got 6 Klingon ships. The Enterprise takes out a couple of them. Kirk tries a crazy warp mind trick.
Yeah, that's really weird. I mean, I think that's Blish trying out his what do you call it? Technobabble is the word that you use in Star Trek, right? Which is like, oh, we'll do this and it'll expand the warp bubble and make a warp bubble antenna that'll encompass the blah blah blah. And anyway, they blow up another ship that way is the important thing, right? So yeah.
So then we're down to 4. They kill 1 battle cruiser with the warp trick. Now and Sulu phasers the other 3. They go. And McCoy tells Kirk that he has cracked the code on the Spocks here in Chapter 7. Yeah, and in Chapter 8, he says...
Well, hold on, I'm glad you mentioned crack the code, because the other thing is the Enterprise has got to try and send a message to the Federation, to Starfleet, about what's going on with Organia. So, but they can't do it because they figure that any codes that they had have been broken by now. So the Uhura... comes up with an idea to use Urish, which is a language that was invented by James Joyce in Finnegan's Wake. It actually exists, by the way. There are people in the 20th century that spoke Urish, some kind of combination of several European languages. And the idea is then you send it in code in Urish, and somebody back in the Federation, if they receive it through all the interference, would be able to figure it out and stuff like that. So that was kind of you're kind of given. I mean, it's like her is not just opening hailing frequency; she's coming up with like code breaking shit, and that's pretty cool.
It's creative. It's a creative,
yeah,
unexpected plot point.
Yeah.
In Chapter 8, McCoy says that the Ringer, that is the fake Spock, won't eat.
Yeah, there's something about how they were sending animals through the neutrino beaming, and they would come back and they would eat, but they would die because they can't take nourishment from the food because their proteins are backwards or something like that.
Yeah,
so they
basically it's like what happened to the Tribbles.
Yeah, exactly. So
they're starving to death, eating.
So they figured that, the problem is that Vulcans can go longer without food. So, but luckily it's been months, and so they've got to have come up with something. And that's what Spock 1 has been doing in that laboratory that he barricaded himself in, is made himself some proteins. Yeah. And he's what?
And he's a southpaw. So if he ever fights Spock 2, they're stepping on each other's toes. They're going to be clashing heads. You know.
Yes.
One's going to get knocked down 5 times. I'm Holyfielding. I'm sorry. And Spock 1 steals a shuttlecraft and splits.
Yeah, and splits and converts it into a warp capable shuttle, which it wasn't before somehow. So, so I don't know exactly. I'm still not sure I was clear how they explained that he managed to do that. But that seems like you don't just bring like an extra suitcase on board and now it's warp capable ship. But they imply that he had some time, right? That he was hidden.
You didn't read the epilogue.
What about
Blish,
the epilogue?
Blish explained it.
I must not have had that in the copy I had, huh?
Yeah, he said it doesn't matter.
Well played. I walked right into that one. No, it's so the idea is for weeks at least, Spock 1 is hidden in the tween decks areas, right? The little crawl spaces, hallways, or at least they think he is, but actually he's squirreled himself away in one of the shuttlecraft, and they don't know it because you can't scan in the inside of a shuttlecraft or whatever, and that's where he's been, and he's been tinkering with it. He's gone all he's gone all Blair Monster on him, right? So Blair's been busy down here making a spaceship. That's literally what Spock 1 is Blair Monster, it turns out. Yes, exactly. So yes, I'm John Carpenter's The Thing-ing is what I'm doing. Thank you.
By this point in the book, I'm sick of the Spock 1, Spock 2 nonsense.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were. I was over it.
Yeah. It seemed to me like it was going to be hard for me to believe that that the bad one wasn't Spock 1 from almost the beginning. So
yeah.
Spock 2 seemed like seemed like our Spock a lot earlier, so. Well,
and I was kind of surprised they were still calling the real Spock Mr. Spock 2 to his face.
Yes. Hey, Mr. Spock 2.
Yeah. But Scotty says they could place... So it turns out Organia has something going on.
Yep.
That's blocking everything out or blocking everything in. But Scotty thinks he can put a tachyon mirror around... That there is a tachyon mirror around Organia, and that's the problem. And he's going to beam down with Kirk and Spock to fix it. So Scotty, Kirk, and Spock are going to beam down.
Yep.
They beam down, and it's nightmarish down there, and Kirk runs into Spock 1.
Yep. And it's interesting because he tells it Spock 1 because he can see his class ring on Spock. He had given his class ring to Spock 1 or whatever, and that's how he tells it to him. He sees his class ring on there because at some point Spock 1 is trying to convince him he's Spock 2 or whatever. But speaking of things, like you said, in a novel that you couldn't do in a TV series, a lot of every time they take a step, it's like they're in a different alternate reality. It's very 1970, very just lick this postage stamp and see what happens, kind of a drink the orange juice, blah blah blah.
It actually reminded me of I don't know if you ever read this The Chronicles of Amber. Did you ever read that?
Mm-mm.
It was a real interesting sci-fi book. It was like volume 1 and volume 2, but it's really good. But it kind of reminded me of that with the nightmarish. It's hard to take a step. Shit's changing and shifting all around you. Yep. I would recommend that. I don't remember who wrote that, so whatever, it doesn't matter. But it also reminded me. Do you remember TNA, the wrestling program?
Yes, I do.
They had an angle around 2009 where Hulk Hogan was over there. Ric Flair was over there, right? They were trying to be the new up-and-coming... they had AJ Styles.
Hot title by getting some of the oldies but goodies, yeah.
Right. They had Kurt Angle. They had Sting. Sting was doing his Joker impression of Heath Ledger.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember any of this shit. Probably not. There was an angle where Hulk Hogan gave his Hall of Fame ring to this other wrestler, Abyss.
Really?
Like they were engaged or something. And it reminded me of this nonsense with Kirk giving his class ring to Spock. The Spock he thinks is the real Spock or whatever. Yep. Or just to tell them apart.
Yep.
How's that for an obscure reference? 2009.
I did not
TNA
think we'd have
wrestling.
a TNA wrestling reference in this, so that's good. I was treating this like the New York Times review of books, and they are always referencing professional wrestling also. So, yeah, very good, I must say.
Yeah.
So, yes, they're on this nightmare world, and every time they're moving around, they're seeing some sort of a different vision or whatever, and it seems like they're implying that Spock 1 is affecting the reality down there, or at least the at least the perceived reality. And then at some point, Spock 2 shows up, and he can figure out also how to manipulate the perceived reality. And then it's like the battle of wills over the fake reality or the real reality or whatever it is.
And
so.
Spock 1 by this point is clearly a bad guy.
Oh, yeah. And never exactly sure why he's a bad guy, but he's a bad guy.
Because he's left-handed, Butch.
Yeah, exactly. The left hand of darkness. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. I can tell you, my daughter's left-handed. I can tell you there is a extra mischief and stuff that comes with being left-handed.
I can believe
and
that.
So Spock's got it. Anyway, somebody say something about more Klingons? That's right. We got 2 battleships, 2 cruisers, and 10 destroyers show up.
Waiting for the Enterprise, which Sulu is still in command of, right? So,
and Sulu does what Sulu does, which is get the hell out of there when other ships show up. How many times did he do that in the show?
Well, he was ordered to do it every time. So, in his fairness, we'll never get to see how well he would have done in battle. Although that seems like a battle you're not going to win. But I thought they were going to win the last battle when it was 5-on-1, and they managed to somehow blow up a whole bunch of them and survive that. So, what do I know?
That's true. Well, anyway, and this gives us time to have a duel between the 2 Spocks. Spock 2, I think, wins.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kills him with a hurricane or a tornado or lightning strike, or I don't know exactly what it was.
It was getting a little crazy here at this point in the book. But Sulu and the Enterprise are heading into a Klingon trap. Kirk, Spock 2, and Scotty stumble their way into the Organian village that they were in Errand of Mercy and decide to defuse the device that's causing the mind shield or whatever, and they do it. So the shield is gone. The war is stopped by the Organians.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, they put a stop to it immediately. So, and then right at the very end of the book, so they promised us a war between the Federation and the Klingons in this book, and they deliver one battle on it, and then the Enterprise is about to get blown up, and then the Organians are released again, and then that whole fleet and 2 of our callback Klingons, Kor from the first Errand of Mercy episode, the first Klingon we ever saw in command, and then Koloth, who was in Trouble with Tribbles, he's referenced. We get to see them for about a page each in this, and they reference them long enough to just put Koloth in suspended animation for 1,000 years. So presumably he gone for a while.
Well, I think it's for like eternity. Yeah. And then they make it so the Klingon High Council is sentenced to 1,000 years without space flight. I'm not sure Blish had permission to do this shit.
Yeah, I think he was writing before anybody thought about it. Hey, maybe we shouldn't paint it in a corner. But again, so the Klingons aren't going to be a threat for 1,000 years, and thank God for that. So,
so what'd you think overall?
Yeah, well, overall, I thought it was a very breezy story. I enjoyed it. Because we get to see, because we get to fly through a whole bunch of different things very quickly. I was entertained for a while by the which Spock is which kind of a thing, but that ran out of steam after a while, I think. It was interesting to kind of get to see some of the characters that we got to see stretch their legs a little bit more. Scotty's way more of a tech head in this than he normally is, even more so. And Uhura gets to do a lot of stuff, so that was cool. Bones, of course, is the psychologist in chief and stuff like that. So, overall, I thought it was entertaining, and but it clearly can't be canon because it just literally takes the main baddie of Star Trek off the map for a millennium. So,
I thought it was pretty good overall. I liked the first part of the story quite a bit, but I did think Spock was too verbose. And Scotty was almost incoherent, like I said. I really had a hard time even reading any of Scotty's dialogue.
Yeah,
but they had some fun ideas, all the philosophical stuff about what happens to you when you beam and you get disassembled and reassembled. Yep. I thought I like the fact that this novel apparently takes place over several months, 3 to 6. There's a war with the Klingons. I like the fact that you can picture, these kind of epic battles.
Yeah.
But it did kind of peter out.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's probably just that he didn't try to write a more detailed ending, because the whole thing didn't really make, that once they started switching reality so fast, I guess I was sort of following it, but it was like, when it was over, I was like, not sure what happened. I was like, I should go back and reread it. I'm not going to go back and reread it. So,
yeah, but it was fun, and I think it definitely shows promise for the idea that, hey, there could be something to these Star Trek novels, and it's a way to continue a show that's been canceled.
Absolutely, and so I guess if we're going to keep a running tally of all the Star Trek novels we've read on this series Journey to Bantam, where do you rank this one on all of the ones we've read so far?
I have this ranked number 1.
Number 1. It's at top of my list too, so that's a good start for it. We'll see how well that goes. But yeah, that's the important thing is there's a big fandom out there for this, right? And as trade paperback books go, like this was never released hard copy. It was just released as a paperback, I think, right? So so there's definitely a market among Star Trek fans for new stories, because the real fans have watched the original series episodes a lot, because that's all there is, and they would love more stories. And you just at 1970, you're still 9 years from the motion picture, right? So the only way you're getting more, you're still 3 years from the animated series at this point. So if you want more Star Trek stories, this is your only way to get it, right? Is either write them yourself, and we all kind of know how well that went, as write them yourself kind of a thing. But it's one of those things where...
I don't know about your copy.
Say again, what about my copy?
Well, how much is your copy? Mine was 60 cents.
Yeah, that's what mine was too. Yeah, that's what mine did too, right? And I was fourth printing is what mine was. First edition, fourth printing. So, but yeah, I enjoyed the book a lot. Like I said, there's a lot of promise. We're going to get. They obviously made the idea that look, you can tell stories that are callbacks to previous stories or sequels to previous stories, or you can tell original stories. And I think so far this novel was content with just sticking with our regular characters, but at some point you could introduce new characters. You could have the characters kind of go off and do interesting things, and the universe is the universe is their oyster, as it were. So
you have opened up a whole new thing. You can do anything almost.
That's right.
And so this is good stuff. This gives me hope. I mean, they'll probably be writing Star Trek novels our whole lifetime.
Yeah. It's amazing to think that they've been writing so many, and now they literally have. There are literally 7 TV series that they could write Star Trek novels on, and they've invented new new complete crews from scratch to write stories about. Right? I mean, it's like they've invented completely new characters and built series of books about them. So
the reboot movies established a whole new timeline. You can go back and just, not that you would need to, but you can go back and do whole new things with the original 5-year mission if you want.
And God help us, at least one member of the original series cast will get into the novel writing business of Star Trek novels at one point. William Shatner himself will pick up pen and paper and write at least 4, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure we'll get to those when we're in our 80s. But stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, this was fun, and I think it'll be fun to walk through these one by one. So the next one up for us is we have to wait 6 more years before the next original Star Trek novel is published.
But if you thought Spock Must Die was a provocative title, what do you think about Spock Messiah?
Exactly. That's going to be an interesting thing, and it'll be interesting to see what exactly. I mean, I think a lot of Trek fans probably thought of Spock as a messiah figure, but this is going to take a completely different take on that story. So thanks for joining us on our inaugural voyage of Journey to Bantam. We've got 11 more stops before we make it to our destination of Bantam, presumably, I guess, for the Bantam conference. But until then, feel free to join us next time when we will be reading along with Spock Messiah.
Good night, everybody.
And